Hello everyone, my name is Dawkinzz and welcome to yet again another edition of the audio narration for Civ Battle Royale Part 28, Multikill. Howdy, hello, hi, and welcome to the Civ Battle Royale Part 28, eh? Who'd have even thought the game would still be running? All praise to TPangolin and his wizard-like ways. This is Proletariat Cossack, signing in. Only kidding, of course. It's LacsiraxAriscal here, purveyor of maps, more localized AI games, and rambling bile-filled speeches over at CBR Model World Congress. Don't know what I'm talking about? You should probably be checking out all of the fun and games over at Civ Battle Royale on Reddit. Critics say just 10 minutes there can change your life forever. I'm going to narrate blind, so I have just as little idea as to what's going on to happen as you do. If I make any enormous oversights, then tell me all about it in the comments and I'll try to beg your forgiveness. Let's get this show on the road. First, check out the state of the world, currently with a fine map by Cylon L and cities, labels, and puppet sea borders added by yours truly. And hey, exclusively for this episode, we have the relationship graph, courtesy of arguably the hardest working member of the community, Mazer Laser. I can't even begin to get my head around all of this, but one thing of particular note is that North American alliance building up between Canada, the Blackfoot, and Texas. With the Americans celebrating the transition to freedom, could this largely autocratic alliance find a small rump state to skewer? I'd be selling my stocks if I were you. Also of note, Kimberly out there on the left, denouncing, warring, and befriending nobody. It must be nice to live in the most peaceful corner of the world. On to action proper. Only joking, it's Yakutia. They seem to be on the front foot in their long war against the Inuit, with ground troops and Kamchatka, and a not-too-shabby fleet besieging Talayok in the north. And that's not all. Tigender Khan's yawning yuckets are the second to make it to the modern era. I'm not sure exactly what text they've researched to get there, in that they're still mainly fighting with pikemen, but still, every achievement is an achievement. Down south, the blockade of Hiroshima seems to be stalling. Yakutia need to start focusing their attacks more if they want to make any real progress. It should be noted out that they are yet to take and hold a city for any considerable amount of time. Ah, the token Maori shot, and really, what can be said here that it hasn't been said 1,000 times or more? Were the Maori placed somewhere outside of Europe or the east coast of America, we'd be calling them one of the strongest contenders for victory. Next to Australia, they look like sitting ducks waiting to die. Still, at least they'll leave a legacy of some healthy, populous cities. Fact of the day, the Chinese version of Speak of the Devil is Speak of Cao Cao, and that should tell you everything you need to know about Cao Cao. The Kimberly, I've thought, have long been one of the most underrated nations of the game. In previous episodes, I've thought that despite a less powerful navy, their land army has always looked more threatening than Australia's, but that now no longer seems to be the case. In fact, Australia looks to be readying its rifles at the border. One somewhat reassuring thought for Kim supporters is that the nearest city to their border, Hobart, is puppeted, so it can't create units. Still, it would be a long, fierce battle should these two nations go to war. Speaking of war, Afghani troops close in on Susa. Taking a small border city might not seem like much of an achievement, but head back just a couple of episodes and you'll see Susa was by far the largest city in Persia. Really, the damage has already been done, but it seems doubtless that Afghanistan will finish the job. It's not all over for Darius of Persia yet, though, as his northern front still looks secure. The Timurids are throwing themselves at Ghazni to no avail, while Armenia, yeah, I don't know either. And though Susa must fall, Gordium will be a much trickier acquisition thanks to those helpful mountains. Day 9382 of the Roman logbooks. Since being exiled from Armenian Anatolia, we are still trapped on this canoe in the Black Sea. Poor Marcus Inferius has gone mad, claiming he can see strange ships in the distance, unlike any in Europe or Asia, with strange, flightless birds wandering the deck. We humored him and gave him some of the last shreds of our remaining rations. There's been no sign of our friends and brothers on the Ballista Company for weeks. If our Byzantine friends in Crimea don't admit us soon, surely we're gonna starve. Life is hell. Signed, Julius. It's not often in this adventure we can say that Central Asia is at peace, and yet here we are. Still, I wouldn't say things look particularly rosy for our Hunnic brethren right now. The Inuit declaration of war on the Sioux last episode is proof that, yes, the AI can be that greedy when it comes to useless tundra cities. It can't be long until Finland decides the area would look much nicer in 2 shades of blue. Elsewhere, check out all of those forts outside of Mosul. The AI really don't build forts very often, so perhaps that's a sign that all is not as flowers and sunshine in this neck of the woods as the current situation may have you believe. Sibir has open borders with Finland and generally seems to be on good terms with the Keks, so could it be the now officially communist Soviets will attract Kumchakhan's ire? Oh my. I don't really know how to sugar this pill. Maybe some time in the Babylonian sub will help Poland with their dreams of into space. The warmonger penalty that Sparta is about to pick up will be an interesting one. Warsaw is particularly undefendable for Sparta, being on an open plain surrounded by 3 strong empires. But Leonidas has pulled stranger things out of the bag. As an official Portugal supporter, even if my heart will forever be in the Philippines, last episode was a joyous one, with the scary Bucks conceding peace with Maria's fair nation, and I'm not particularly scared of a Chilean threat either. So where now for Portugal? Well, Braga is very undefended, but Maria and Ahmed of Morocco have long been fairly close friends. I think a more interesting prospect lies up north. Observe that great general stationed outside of Hastings. England is already facing war with France and Ireland. Could Maria seize the initiative and grab Hastings for herself? Let's face it, it's unlikely. Still, I think we can watch the plucky Portuguese with increased interest after their lucky escape from the pirates. As the world rockets into modern era, some nations decide to take, how shall I put this, somewhat smaller leaps forward. And that's fine. Mao knows what he's doing. I'm sure, after all, he's survived this long. Heaven knows what the Mongols are up to, though. Tabriz, their old city, is being handed to them on a plate, but Genghis seems to have accidentally inherited Gandhi's personality and has done nothing for centuries now. So my money's on the ultimate irony. Tibet to take out Mao Zedong. You heard it here first, folks. Ouch. Is this episode going to be a fabled double elimination? It's sure looking that way. Still, that city will be happier in White Walker hands than Sioux ones. How about we play a game for the rest of the episode? If anyone spots any Polish or Sioux troops wandering the lands, carrying the last banners of their crippled empires, tell us in the comments. Oh my god, did I say double elimination? I might have to increase that number as the Boers enact a triumphant offensive to the Congolese coast, conquering every single city in Nzinga's possession. And with only 3 triremes left, this might actually be the end of the Congolese Empire. Who saw that one coming before Poland and the Sioux? It's a shame to say goodbye to Congo. I was always a fan of them back in MK1, but they did very little this time around, losing all of their northern forward settles very quickly and failing again and again to take even the simplest cities in Mampang. When even the Zulu can take a city off of you for some turns, you know you're doomed. America count Brazil among their democracy-loving friends. People always bark on about the Buccaneers doing a triumphant rampage through the American soil, but I think Lincoln packs more of a punch than you might think. I sure don't see any Gatling guns in any of their immediate neighbors. Indeed, Texas's military looks a lot weaker than the Union's, and the Petit Gave's main defense corps consists of 3 scouts. Sure, those Corsairs would put Lincoln's coastal cities in a pickle. Triremes, Lincoln? This is the modern world now, but there's a fat chance of the Bucks making it into Lincoln's northern inland core. Back in Mark 1, I was a Carthage supporter, so I still feel a little invested in the old Clover Greens. And I have to say, after a troubling last couple of parts, I'm now pretty sure they're about to pack the punch that could see Ayyubids put in the grave for good. Muskets and war elephants can tear through a few meager crossbowmen that Saladin is fielding. And what's more, the Ayyubids have no reserves. I'm confident we're looking at a new, greener dawn. I'm impressed that Hastings has managed to hold on to 21 population in light of the war echoing through its walls. Elizabeth's last English stronghold is threatened by a few frogs, but it's going to take more French soldiers than that to bring the city down. If Ireland really committed, however, the sun would surely be setting on the British Empire. The Mongols could do with less crossbows and more muskets or even keshiks. Still, when you compare the Golden Horde to the Silver Soldiers to the west, Genghis Khan could probably do a lot of damage. Yakusha, meanwhile, have apparently forgotten how to build anything except for Gatling guns and workers. A war between them and the Mongols would be an interesting, if probably fruitless one. Oh, why are we even bothering with this? We all know Siberia is doomed to eternal peace. Next. Controversial, a mid-episode stats shot. If any of those come as any surprise, you clearly haven't been following the series very well. With that said, it's interesting that Taigen of the Yakuts is only 7th despite being one of the few leaders to break the modern era barrier. Let's see. Dead, 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 nearly dead, dead. David? Oh dear, there's no real reason for Israel to be doing so terribly. I think it's just the AI's tendency to missionary spawn rather than do anything useful at all. Still, with Armenia, Persia, Arabia, and the Ayyubids for neighbors, we'll be seeing their scouts for a while yet. It could only happen on turn 300. The Spartans celebrate their recent industrial breakthroughs and break down the gates of Warsaw and eliminate the Poles once and for all. Furthermore, the Poles don't even get the comfort of beating the Congolese, as a quick look at the minimap will tell you that they have recaptured Ancuna in the south of their old empire. Oh, Poland, 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 what went wrong? We had such high hopes for you, be it a terribly powerful UA and UU, or your sterling performance last time around. It seemed nailed on that the strong flag would be flying over Europe before too long. But the Lambda leg warriors proved too much, unless that pikeman can put in a fight for its life. That's going to be a big warmongering penalty for Leonidas of Sparta, as I pointed out earlier. Who's going to leap on Leo? They say it couldn't happen. They said a single Ashanti pikeman would be ruining it for everyone else. Those more positive look to the naval nations of Hawaii and Australia as our only chance in seeing a world government more dignified and structured than the modeled World Congress. No one, I repeat, no one looked at the Pashtuns. But it is Afghanistan who host the first ever World Congress in Kabul. It won't be for 25 turns though, so let's not think about it right now. Instead, have a gander to the right. Everyone's least favorite continent just got a mite more interesting. This is turning into an episode where dreams come true. After several millennia of stagnation, could this be the war that turned South America into a bloodbath? The odds are looking good. A coalition from the two strongest nations of the continent on arguably one of the weakest. A large land army just a stone's throw away from Buenos Aires, looking to repeat the successes of Chile in Mark I. And a Brazil that boasts the only riflemen on the continent. This could be carnage. A look at the northern front. It certainly looks somewhat more even up here, and if the Colonial War was good for anything, it was telling us that the land wars in the Amazon basin are never particularly good ideas. But rifles against muskets could be the key difference here. Also, take a gander at the minimap. The Sioux's last stand apparently didn't even dignify a screenshot. But their final stronghold has fallen in what has to be the least glamorous death of the series so far. I think it's a crying shame to see the Sioux go, as they've been one of the most consistently plucky nations in America for the whole game. In many ways I saw them as the American equivalent of my beloved Philippines, not doing a great deal wrong, but garnering the hatred of the world for some unknown reason. God, things are really heating up this episode, and we're only on slide 24. I'm feeling pretty lucky to have this one. Oh man, oh man, oh man, could this episode get any better? Kumsha Khan of Sibir just can't sit still and declares war on Stalin, taking Genghis Khan of Mongolia with him. It would have been nice to have seen the two Khans clash heads again, but oh well, this is the next best thing. I do like old Kumsha, he's certainly been one of the most entertaining additions this time around, but there's one thing on my mind. What will Finland do? They've been loyal to both Stalin and Kumsha in the past. Will they turn on one of their old allies, or will they remain neutral? Also, remember that Pole-Sioux spotting game? The northern front of the Ural War, and likely where most of the action will take place, the tundra towns of northern Russia, Sibir have an obvious advantage here. Although Stalin's navy could produce a situation similar to the Congolese war down south. Nevertheless, Tbilisi has already started taking damage, and Baku will surely be next to follow. This may be the last ever shot you see of the Congolese Empire. For once the trireme in Ancuna is felled, Congo has no more units capable of taking cities. But it's not all fun and games for Mr. Kruger of the Boers. His army has been exhausted by the Congolese war, and even a declaration of war from the Zulus would be problematic at this point. An Ethiopian one could be fatal. A shot of the Sioux conquerors. If there's anything the Inuits like doing, it's city spamming. The Inuit city list is a quite long one, and look how many lone names there are. In this shot alone, I see Tara, Ciudad Guayana, Samara, Silchonying, Arauco, Estarjvan, and Windsor. And there's at least 2 more cities to the east that we haven't even seen yet. I'd be interested in seeing the Inuits' happiness score. Back to the action slide of the Inuit Empire, and predictably, not much has changed. Igloolik has taken a lick of damage, but not enough for any White Walkers to lose sleep over. What's that weird brown resource thing to the south of Igloolik? Anyone know? A look at the wide seas of Azanesia. Well, I don't know if you can see the sea behind that armada there. It's certainly not the obvious place for Parks of Australia to plop his ships, so what's afoot? Could the Maori soon be feeling the heat, or is it Hawaii who's about to be paid a visit from the Wabagongs? Whoever it is, I don't fancy their chances. It's a cliche, but Australia sure do look powerful. Okay, I take it back. Clearly, Australia put their navy there because there was nowhere else to put it. All I'm saying is, if the game crashes, I think we know who to blame. Praise be to the Babylonians who gave us this, illuminating shot of Khat, the Kimberley's holdings in Antarctica. There's nothing here that we haven't seen before, but I think it bears pointing out that Wollongara has very quickly become quite the population center. Could this be the base for a spectacular voyage west? A Kimberley-Boer war could be quite the sight to behold. Blimey, the Afghans are taking their time. I know you guys have a Congress to get ready and all, but Susa should have fallen years ago. It's already fallen to a single population point, from being one of the world's major metropolises. Yet, though the city is surrounded by trebuchets, it stays pretty much on the same health as it was last time we saw it. And even if they did weaken the city, they've neglected to bring along any melee units. Armenia and the Timurids have made no progress either. Things aren't looking nearly as bad for Darius's Persia as it first appeared. Hey, get me in my predictions. The Portuguese did indeed plonk down that citadel. Unfortunately for me and all the folks at the subreddit Now You're Talking, Maria has neglected to follow this up with a declaration of war, and as such, it's Napoleon's of France who is taking advantage of that sweet, sweet defense. Indeed, Hastings has begun to take damage, finally. Blimey, could this be a quadruple elimination? Surely not. Wow, that must be a weight off Elizabeth's chest. I certainly didn't know this war was happening. Morocco has to be one of the most hopeless nations that isn't half dead yet. A fairly strong Portugal to the north and a frighteningly competent Carthage to the east, and, well, they could probably find a good match in Mali. But were I a power ranker, I'd probably be putting Morocco pretty far down right now. Genghis, I already did something this episode, Khan, advances to the industrial era, which when you're right next to a modernized Yakusha and an overwhelmingly powerful Sibir, albeit one that is currently quite friendly, isn't really good enough. Still, the carpet is real. A punishing war against Tibet or China would be effortless, and even Yakusha looks weak to the Mongol hordes at the moment. We all know they won't do any of that. It's everyone's favorite Caribbean island-based nation, the Buccaneers. Although you'd be mistaken for thinking Hawaii had already conquered it, what with all those oranges wandering around. For so many island cities cramped into such a small space, there's some biggins there. Port Royal is the obvious one, and Nassau has also now broken the 20 threshold along with Petit Guave. But all of the whole area is teeming with baby pirates. The question, of course, is where all these infant swashbucklers will cut their teeth on the high seas. With the Portugal War fizzling out, there are limited choices left for the Jolly Rogers. America might not be a bad shout, although it would be likely to come out of the coast of Petit Guave. Texas has far too many allies, and the the Mayans are just boring. Perhaps another transcontinental war is in the order of the day. In an episode of great conquests and exciting events, one war that hasn't exactly lived up to its expectations is the new Vietnam-Burma conflict. A few Myanmar units have thrown themselves against their old city of Bago, but to no avail. Mountains get in the way of any other interesting possible fronts, so a stalemate followed by Burma handing half their cities to the Trung sisters then. That's it. That's the end. And Zynga has run out of usable Congolese triremes, and Zynga whited out. But there's no Pokemon centers to save in Zynga here. Congo are officially the third civilization to be knocked out this part. Wow. They go down in a blaze of curses, apparently, and are joined by Lincoln in denouncing half the known world. It's an ambitious move for Lincoln to denounce Texas, but as I said earlier, I think an American Civil War could be more balanced than it first appears. Alas, a denouncement is one thing, but war is likely a long way off. Wow, calm down, folks. Denouncements are coming out in spades today. It may look like nothing has progressed in the Argentine War, and that's because nothing has happened. But that's because it's actually still the same turn that the war broke out. Chile haven't even moved yet. Yeah, it's been an eventful turn. One thing that is interesting, though, is that Chilean Navy outside of the Argentine maritime borders. Backdoor squad much? All aboard the hate train. Next stop, Mexico. More wisely, Mexico refrained from denouncing their neighbors and instead focused on domestic expansion. Notably, they annexed the former Sioux capital of Hunkpapa, but not Oglala, meaning that my next map is going to look really, really ugly. Thanks, guys. Texas are still looking a lot weaker than they have done in previous installments. I even spy a few composite bowmen among their ranks, which, when your neighbor has as many Gatling guns as Mexico does, is not a particularly good sign. Texas should start loosening those gun laws, build more muskets, and get working on kicking out those Mexicans. Hashtag vote Trump. Tbilisi inevitably falls to the Siberian multitudes. Baca will, as predicted, be next. I'm gonna let you finish, Kumsha, but these aren't the most useful conquests. See that relatively unprotected maroon colony right in the midst of your empire? You sure you don't fancy instigating Con War's Modern Warfare Edition? Portugal, what on earth did Hawaii ever do to you? Meanwhile, Hastings is looking as untouchable as ever. Come on, Maria, do Portugal proud. Oh look, a Hakapalida. I'm sure we've already gone through that. These guys get bonuses from great generals, right? Not sure what else to say, really. A Swedish-Finnish war seems about as likely as an Aussie-Kimberley one. Boo. It's the evil Manila-grabbing Champa. I refuse to point out their powerful navy and strong strategic position on principle. Instead, feast your eyes on Bago, which is looking a lot more threatened than it did just a turn ago. Burma could soon be repatriating their Siamese holdings. The Arrow of God wants me to tell you that Indonesia are, in fact, doing their duty in joining in the war on Burma. Go you, Indonesia. That's your one bit of relevance for this millennium. Now back to sleep with you. Still there, still totally outclassed. The only really interesting thing I can think to say about the Maoris in this shot is that Rapakapaka is the first non-capital city in the world to reach 31 population. This means that it will be the first city to be granted font size 18 on my city map. Yahoo! Okay, is there a war next slide or something? Well, that's certainly a screenshot. Give me 5 minutes to think about something to say about this expansive sea. Okay, so the Inuits look like they might be headed south. Seems an odd turn of events when they're currently not doing too great in a war against the great northern Snoryaks. Could they be targeting a bizarre far-off nation? Probably not. Meanwhile, Mexico have a few prophets swimming about, possibly looking to spread the one true faith west to Asia. And there's that Korean sub sneakily sketching out the Pacific Ocean floor. The home front of the Ural, which I may have slightly misnamed, the Urals are a bit to the east, aren't they? And it looks pretty even at the moment. Zaranj, near the site of the former Siberian city of Chimbatura, has been annexed, so that's one more city to help the war effort for Kumsha Khan. If I were him, I'd be spamming artillery along with riflemen. That's his biggest technological edge over Stalin. I think we can all agree that Kumsha Khan has this front in the bag, though. Stalin's navy looks a poor shell of its strength at the start of the episode, and Krasnoyarsk has joined Baca in taking a great deal of damage. But still, they're wasteland cities in the middle of nowhere. This isn't the important front. This is just the border tidying part of the war. Call me controversial, but I don't think too much of Agent M. Has she actually made any correct predictions so far? I don't think she has. Nevertheless, guessing that David might declare war on the Ashanti isn't a bad shout. They're pretty much the only nation that his army has a chance of beating. Meanwhile, I know it's been emphasized again and again and again, but there's a reason people keep banging on about the difference between the Ethiopian army and the Boers. Haile Selassie might never get his chance again. The time to strike is upon him. Semiramis, not much better than Agent M in terms of accuracy, offers a much more interesting war prospect. She posits that Pearson of Canada is looking west to the Blackfoot. It would be a controversial declaration of war. Last time we heard, Crowfoot and Persia were best friends forever. I can't say I imagine it being a resounding success either. Perhaps leave this one in the plotting stage, Pearson. Afghanistan have nearly captured Susa, although they're still yet to remember that vital melee unit. Regardless, they prematurely celebrate with another declaration of war, this time on David. In the event that they tear through Persia, this might become relevant, but until then it's another meaningless war, along with Napoleon's joint declaration of war. I'm trying desperately hard to ignore the irony in Napoleon's declaration of war against the nation that controls Syria. Let's look at that ideology instead. Say hello to Dictator Morgan. The Bucks follow the trend and turn autocratic. Do what you want because a pirate is free does not apply to this reality. I mean, at least David knows to aim low with who he's picking fights with. Poor Crimea. I really hope someone eliminates them sooner rather than later. Every time I see them, I feel a mixture of pity and nausea. Someone has literally just asked me something about separating Sweden's German and Polish puppet states on the map. Well, newsflash, all that's irrelevant as Sweden annexes Krakow. Elsewhere, brave Julius lands in the Caucasus, ready to start a new life for his Roman brothers in arms. Hilarious. Are we sure we didn't send M to Nicaea and she's got confused? Arabia and Armenia were at war, which would truly be great were there not an Israel in the way. Armenia, the apparent defenders, do have open borders with Israel, but I don't see them getting through the wall of prophets and pikes. To the west, Bilbais is still the center of the Great Northern African War. I wouldn't be surprised if that war was still raging on in 20 parts time. Still over Bilbais. The Persians can thank their lucky stars as peace is finally sized with the Blackfoot and Boers. Oh well, at least Mirwais of Afghanistan is still yet to bring a pointy stick to the Battle of Susa, and the Persian War looks much the same as it did back in Slide 7. Where Susa has fallen, Pasargad has risen, having now become the main population center of the Achaemenid Empire. Hawaii. Peaceful, industrial, and still royally fucked if and when Henry Parkes of Australia comes knocking. If only they kept their army in their own borders, eh? Damn, for a moment I thought that was Sri Lanka, and this might be an interesting turn of events, but a Champa-Armenia war isn't exactly setting me alight with expectation. Good-for-nothing cowardly purple pirates grumble, grumble, grumble. Up north we can see the Bago offensive has been cut back, and both Burma and Vietnam now sit back on their haunches. East Asia has been the least interesting region in this episode for sure. Better late than never, Babylonians. For all those who didn't trust the minimap, there you have it. The Sioux are no more. I pretty much said everything I have to say about the Burma-Nam War a couple of slides ago, so I'll take the opportunity to remind you that the Mughals are in this war as well on Burma's side. Yep, that tells you pretty much everything you need to know about this war. Oh boy. Fans from MK1 will remember a series of entertaining wars between sparring partners, Stalin of the USSR and Tiridates of Armenia. Those who joined us for this series may remember at least Stalin's invasion and razing of Gavar, near where Tashkent is now. Well, it's time to get the ball rolling again. Stalin tried and failed 1,000 times to take Yerevan, not far from where Yerevan Tashat, sorry about butchering it, is now back in Mark 1. Can he get luckier this time, or will the vodka go to his head again? On a side note, that's where the ballista has got to. Clearly the Legion told them to meet on the Big Sea near Armenia, not realizing there were two of them. Baku and Krasnoyarsk both look on the brink of falling, although curiously the Siberian troops seem to have fled Baku. What monstrosity could Stalin have conjured to guard the city gates? What fierce creature could scare off the brave silver armies of Kumcha Khan? Chile and Portugal make peace. We'll come back for you one day, Chile. In the top right, you can see Chile's privateer replacement, which earns experience 75% faster and can be upgraded at half price to a destroyer, meaning Chile will have a terrifying navy soon enough. I'm going to put my hands over my eyes and pretend I can't see how boringly the Brazil-Argentina war is going. Things will get better soon, right? Aw yeah, this is what I'm talking about. Chile hype, Chile hype, Chile hype. While finally hitting the industrial era, I'd have thought they'd be more advanced by now, to be honest. Chile digs right into Argentina's core. Their navy, joined with Brazil, is utterly indomitable. We haven't seen a single South American nation conquer a city yet, but I'm confident that next part might just be the one. What better way to finish the day's proceedings than with a gentle reflection of, nah, just kidding. Massive war incoming. Leonidas and Shaka, uselessly, finished with Poland, is throwing the Spartan might back at an old enemy, the Ayyubids. With Carthage putting more and more pressure on, could this be the final pile-on for Saladin's beleaguered nation? We'll find out next time, because it's time for the stats. And as ever, we start with population. Apart from the Soviets going down and Sibir going up, predictably, there's not much changed here. With 3 nations gone this episode, the Huns now trail the pack. A low Portugal could be problematic for everyone's favorite lazy layabouts. The Inuits have built another city according to this list. Otherwise, again, not much to see here. Again, the true dregs of society. We'll be seeing Argentina on this list soon, just you wait. Next. In not the most interesting pieces of news, everyone has discovered roughly one more technology than they had done last time. Japan slip out of the top 13 and make way for the USSR. Ooh, a declaration of war. A Champa-Mughal war could theoretically see some action, although it's unlikely. It is worth mentioning, though, that the Mughals are currently allied with Burma. Could we be seeing the Champa take on their close neighbors soon? Oh right, the list. England start dropping, but otherwise you've seen all these names before. We don't always get to see military manpower, so it's a blessing when the Babylonians grant us a look. And my word, look at the gap between the Aussies and the second place Inuit. A lot of people are starting to grow doubts about Australia, and I don't think they're an absolute runaway snowball, but only a fool would write them out of the runnings. I'm very impressed with Mexico. Time to try out that army, methinks. Well, it looks like the Sioux are well and truly dead. The Congolese and the Poles are still around, though, with Congo rather embarrassingly surpassing the still existent England in military strength. Is that Burma peeking in at the top? I hope for their sake it's not. Catholicism and Judaism still vie for #1 religion. Oh, and the Akadu make up the second tier, and Buddhism and Shinto the third. Islam may only have one city under its belt, but 51 followers is nothing to be sniffed at. And finally, as ever, the religion map. I'll be scouring this later for the new Inuit city. In the meantime, thank you all for reading. Thanks to For God and the Queen for covertly letting me narrate this episode, and thanks to you, TPangolin, for, well, everything. And thanks to everyone who makes this community the great hive of awesome that it is. If you're not part of it, join it. Now. Do it. I feel very privileged to have narrated such a dramatic episode. See you all in the comments for the bi-weekly writing critique. And that's it for another audio narration for the Civ Battle Royale. My name is Dawkinzz, and Burger Krieg will see you next time for part 29.